Welcome to Season 4 of the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to teksystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. Today we're going to talk about the importance of diversity in leadership teams and how this can translate to tangible benefits for organizations. To help me discuss this topic, I'd like to welcome Eva Huston, Chief Strategy Officer at Duck Creek Technologies. Eva, welcome to the show.
Great. Thanks for having me, Greg.
Why don't we start by you giving a little background on yourself and what you're currently doing at Duck Creek?
Great. Yes, as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Strategy Officer for Duck Creek Technologies. I've been at Duck Creek since August of 2020, so I'm a pandemic join to the company, which has been interesting. And what I do at Duck Creek is, the way I like to describe it is I orchestrate strategy. And why I use that word is it's really a team effort for us to think about how we're going to serve the insurance industry with our SaaS in the cloud software.
Great. Well, let's dive in here, and really looking forward to talking about this topic. Let's talk about why diversity in leadership is so important. So, why don't we start by how would you characterize the short as well as the long-term benefits of a more diverse leadership and executive team?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I think about a lot. And, having grown up in industries that have been, male dominated tech, before that I was in banking. It's one of the things that's really near and dear to my heart. And the way I think about it is the benefit of diversity is really that we get to harness the power of a lot of different people who have creative ideas. And I think that creativity, particularly in business, is really important. The other benefits in terms of having diverse workforces, we're providing opportunities for all sorts of people. I mean, I think that that's important. And it also allows us to really represent the people who we serve. I mean, if I think about insurance and what we do, I mean, everybody of all different walks of life, different backgrounds is insured. And in order for insurance to be good for them, I think we need people with those perspectives.
So as a woman leader in the tech industry, and as you mentioned, you've been in several industries that are historically male populated. What are some of the things that companies can do? Given that there's definitely short and long term benefits. What can companies do to provide the same type of opportunities to people that might not fit the typical stereotype?
Mhm. Well, I actually, I'll start with one thing. Sort of whenever I describe myself, I prefer to describe myself as a leader who happens to be a woman as opposed to a woman leader,
Huh.
because I think leaders come from all different walks of life.
Yeah.
And, what I think that what we can really do is start with an open mind. I mean, when you want to have a diverse organization, you have to start with an open mind. And in my career, I mean, look, I've been really fortunate to have just this amazing career that continues on and just loving everything that I'm doing at Duck Creek. But I've always taken roles that I haven't done before. I've always had a non traditional path. I mean, I graduated from Georgetown with a degree in international politics. And then I became a banker, and then I became a CFO, and then I became a chief strategy officer. That's not really typical. And the thing that I've benefited from is that I had people who believed in me, who saw not, did I kind of climb the ladder in the order that everybody else did, but did I have the skills? Did I have the passion? Did I have the drive to contribute to the organization? And so I think when we are leading organizations, we need to start with the open mind that, everybody has something that they can contribute. Their resume may not look exactly like the traditional path, but that actually might even be sort of one of their superpowers because they came up a different way. They might have a different approach that can really drive the business in a better and different way.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think, that goes both ways as well, as far as not only the leaders having an open mind, but also providing tools and just I think the comfort, or, this might be where psychological safety comes in, where people can stretch. You mentioned you yourself stretched a bit, and I personally, I know that one as well. It's just,
Yeah.
if I'm if I'm comfortable, I'm probably not doing enough or I'm not doing the right thing. So, how can leaders also provide that kind of safety where maybe you do something, it's 100% of the time it's not the right fit, but you give people that safety to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, I think it really does start from, I think, as a leader being human, being authentic, admitting that we make mistakes too. Trust me, I've made plenty of mistakes in my careers, none of them fatal. And I think that's really, if you kind of go back to actually childhood, that's how we learn, right?
Yeah.
So what it's important for a leader to do is to sort of assess the people that are on their team and saying, like, where can they stretch, and say, no, go do this. And when the person says, well, I don't know, I haven't done that before, really encourage them to say, that's okay. There's a first time for everything. I think the other thing that is really important that kind of comes out is that by encouraging people who haven't done things before, we get different thinking. And there's a quote from Einstein. I'll probably butcher it, but basically it says we can't solve problems by using the same thinking we always had. And
Yeah.
so if we're looking to drive our businesses to be better, we need those people to think differently. And I think showing people that that is a power that they have, bringing that different mindset to it, even if they don't do it exactly perfectly the first time, is how we can give people that comfort to go and try something.
Having been a leader in several organizations, including Duck Creek Technologies, where you currently are, what are some ways that you've personally seen diversity help and benefit these organizations?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've seen it in a lot of ways. Like I said, I think there is this, people coming at things a different way. I mean, having perspectives, that you haven't seen before. I mean, whether it's, based on, somebody is a woman or a man. Actually, I think that, that's one of the things that I think is interesting when I see women in the workforce, because they do have a different experience in life. Many of them, like myself, may be mothers and have that experience of, you know, um, raising children and trying to help children find their way in the world. And I think that, not that we want to call any of our colleagues children, but we are all hopefully growing in the way children are. And I think
Yeah.
that women sometimes bring that. People might call it nurturing, but I actually call it coaching. I think that ability to come in and say, well, where is their gap and how do I help them get there? I think that's an example. I think you also see people who come from different cultural backgrounds, where there may be different expectations in terms of, I mean, maybe even there might be different expectations in terms of what teamwork means. I think that in the Western world, we often have a very individualistic view of ourselves as a part of a team. And in other cultures, it's really the individual is subsumed into the team. And so I think when you see those type of things kind of come out indirectly in the workforce, the companies get better. Um, I would also add that I think that there's just this sense of camaraderie when we create a place where people can not just, bring their diversity, but expose their diversity, I guess is the way I would say it. When people share things about their cultural backgrounds. I mean, we do some really fun things at Duck Creek in terms of celebrating, different holidays and different cultural backgrounds. And I'm always amazed to just learn about these things. And when you do that and people are sort of free and open to be themselves, I think the biggest thing is it takes this sort of mental overhead out, which can be then more productive and make people happier. I mean, if you have to spend 20% of your time, 30% of your time, 50% of your time pretending to be something that you aren't because you want to fit in,
Yeah.
that's just wasted brain power. So I think when I see organizations where there isn't that overhead to kind of be like everybody else, I think they're just more productive.
Yeah, totally agree, and I do. That's a really interesting way of looking at that. Is that there's pressure to conform even when
Hmm.
there is a more homogenous workforce. So it's not like you get away from that. And I think also the other interesting thing that you're bringing up. I mean, and I've experienced this too. Is if I'm on a team and everybody immediately agrees with everything that I say or something like that, what do we really gain? We don't need a
Right,
team if we all
right,
agree and we all come from the same background and we all have the same opinions. Like
right.
where there are definitely dysfunctional ways of disagreeing and arguing and things like that. But where I've found the most benefit and where I've learned the most, where I've pushed, if I was a consultant, pushed my clients the most, if I was in-house pushed the company the most is when there was some disagreement and just completely different ways of looking at things. Even if we went back and were similar to the original starting point, at least we got to look at it from different ways. And I think what you're talking about is, that openness to embracing those differences and not being afraid to disagree. I think that's so valuable.
Yeah, I love that you say that because I always say one thing that I really dislike when I'm in work and I go into a meeting and I say, "Hey, I have a great idea," and I'm usually pretty passionate about my ideas,
Yeah.
and everyone says that's a great idea, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? Like you have nothing to say, you have no reason to tell me why this is not a good idea or how we might do it differently." So I
Right.
think being in an organization where people feel comfortable doing that and it doesn't feel like it's an attack on the person for who they are, but it's just more of a, let's put it, constructive, healthy competition in terms of ideas. I
Yeah.
think that's great.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I can be in a room full of people that agree with my idea when I'm alone.
Right.
What I want is yeah, that I like that healthy competition and that where I mean everybody wins because they're working together as opposed to that idea that you have to own the winning idea or something like that.
Absolutely.
Well, let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about future leaders and the future of the workforce. So, in the insurance industry specifically, older generations are retiring, and according to
Yeah.
a recent survey, only 37.6% of Gen Z students are interested in the insurance industry as a career option. So, what does that say to you? And what would you say to these younger generations that feel this industry is stagnant?
Yeah, well, I would say a couple of things. I mean, one, I think that when you look under the covers of insurance, you'll actually find it's really dynamic. I mean, if you are, thinking about, building software, if you're thinking about analytics, if you're thinking about how data can make the world better, I mean, these are all things that are happening in insurance companies today. And so I actually think that there's a great opportunity for the next generation to come in and reinvent some of the older ways that insurance has operated. I would also say that I think one of the things that's really amazing about insurance, and particularly for people, who talk about, wanting to be mission oriented, wanting to have something beyond, just coming in and doing a job and getting a paycheck. If you think about insurance, I mean, it's got to be one of the industries that's just so foundational to making the world work. And the reason why I say that is if you think about it, insurance is something you don't want to think about until you need it, and then you just want it to work. And what that means is it's really something that provides a layer of security for us. If something were to happen, if your, apartment were to be burgled and, your bike was stolen, and the fact that you could get a new bike without having to go and work months to get that, or
Yeah.
other more catastrophic scenarios, that security lets you take some risks, and by taking risk in the world, that's how we get better. We kind of go back to your point about like how do individuals take risk and be okay that they can fail. I think insurance in an economic sense provides that, because if you have that base layer of knowing like, okay, well, if everything's stolen out of my apartment, I can still go get a bed and survive. um, that if you didn't have that, you would behave very differently.
Yeah.
And we need people to take risk in the world because we need the world to keep getting better. So you can be super quantitative if you're worried about it being boring. Trust me, it's not. And then if you think about wanting to contribute to the world, I think that it's a great industry to be able to do that in.
What do you think companies can do to change kind of that messaging? Because I think a lot of people they see the consumer facing part of it, and or
Mhm.
they have some stereotype of a door to door insurance salesperson or or
Mhm.
something like that. What can companies do to to attract this younger generation of talent, because they're going to be the leaders, right? In a little bit here. So, how do they attract that younger generation of
Yeah,
talent?
I think that it's about us telling the stories about how insurance impacts people's individual lives. I think that people relate to it much more easily when they see it that way, as opposed to, what is the loss ratio and all of those things that are very technical. Actually, I've had a lot of experience since I've uh, now been in insurance for, gosh, more than a decade. I always tested my stories out on my children. because they were like, what do you do? Like, how does this all work? And so I would say, okay, well, you have all these toys in your closet. What if our house caught on fire? The insurance would help buy those new toys. I mean, they're older now, so they don't really care about that.
Right,
But
right.
I think that trying to show people how insurance has impacted their lives, and how it can impact other people's lives. I mean, one of the things that I think about a lot, having spent all of the pandemic era in New York City, and just seeing all these small businesses close down because they didn't have the safety net of business interruption insurance for a variety of reasons we can go into historically. But one of the things I think about is like, what if we were able to find a way to use data and analytics to ensure the unknown, which I guess is basically what COVID has been.
Yeah.
If 10% more of those businesses had stayed in business, and they had employed the people who they employed regularly, and they had provided the services to the people who lived here, in New York City, like, what a better place we would be in today. And so those are the kind of exciting things that I think about. Now, I think people will tell you traditionally, well, you it would be hard to achieve because of the following things, but I look at it more as like, let's dream, and let's try to find ways in a very analytic, business oriented way, but to help insurance serve the world in ways it hasn't before.
Yeah, I mean, do you think the I totally agree with you, and I see in any financial services or insurance related area, there's definitely, it feels like there's a lot of baggage as far as stereotypes about industries or whatever. But to your point, I think as software and as technology continues to, the quote, software is eating the world, I think it's certainly happening in areas like insurance. And to me, that's exciting as somebody that's a technology optimist and
Hmm.
all of those things. So yeah, I mean, it would seem to me that a younger generation that's excited about things like getting involved in data science and all of those things could really, insurance would be an industry that, to your point about ensuring the unknown, like that seems like a great challenge to the right person, right?
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I mean, I think your stat was 37% would be interested. That's not too bad. I mean, more than a third.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah, I'd like to get that up higher, but I mean, look, it's never going to be 100% for any industry, right?
right,
Or if
right,
it is, then, people are just saying they want to do it because everyone else is doing it. So
right.
I'd love to have that 37% or more of those folks who are passionate about what we're doing, come and join us. And, yeah, I think the other thing is it is a lot of fun. I mean, there is a real tangible outcome. I mean, we produce the software that basically makes this all work. So when there is a hurricane and somebody needs their roof repaired, that can get done quickly, appropriately, and they can kind of get back to their regular life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one last question before we wrap up, and along the lines of future leaders. So in addition to creating opportunities for more diversity and equity now, as well as ensuring those younger talent pools consider the insurance industry early in their career, it's also important that organizations plan for their future leadership. So, what are some ways, in addition to simply attracting them to the organization, what are some ways that you recommend that companies look for planning their future leadership?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to start really early in a person's career, and encouraging those leadership traits, even if they're not, technically whatever you might, rank as a leader within an organization. One of the things that I always say is you don't need a title to be a leader. A
Yeah,
leader is really somebody who is able to sort of marshal resources to make something better. I mean, that would probably be the simplest way of thinking about a leader, inspiring people to make things better. And I think encouraging people, even when they're young in their careers, to take those opportunities, even in when they're in little small bites, I think is a great way, because then when they get to the level in the organization in which you're now a leader,
right,
they've been doing it for years. One of the things that I often saw back when I was working in investment banking is you would have people who were great performers, and then they'd get to a level and somebody would say, okay, now you're in charge of being the leader of this area. And they really had not had that experience in a way that prepared them for that. Now, some people
yeah,
were able to step up and do a great job, and others, they were more a person who would prefer to kind of work on their own and do deals and transactions. But I think it just goes to anything. Like it's never too early to start training skills. And I think leadership is a skill, not just in the business world, but in, in the world more broadly. I mean, how do we show people what the world can look like, how it can be good, and how we can do good things? Even on a daily basis, you're walking down the street and you see a piece of trash, you pick it up, it's not yours, and you put it in the trash can. I mean,
Yeah.
that's leadership too. So I think that sometimes we overweight these words, and it's, I always laugh whenever people like, I'm the chief strategy officer of Duck Creek, because to me that feels very weighted. But what it really is, it's trying to find a way that we can enhance what we're doing to make the world better.
Yeah, I love that. Love that definition. That's great. Well, Eva, thank you so much for joining the show. This was great talking with you. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with what you're doing?
You can check us out on our website at duckcreek.com. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn if you're interested in some of the things that I post, which are a mix of things about the insurance industry for those who aren't in the 37% interested yet, but also really about leadership, diversity, women leaders, and yeah, just sometimes some fun things too.
Wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Eva Huston, Chief Strategy Officer at Duck Creek Technologies, for joining the show. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by Tech Systems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.